Oh, didn't see you there. E-bikes are big business these days. The industry is absolutely booming and we're covering them more and more on TNW. You know, with things like the VanMoof and the Cowboy, just the technology behind them has just got so much more advanced and interesting. But those two bikes, as fantastic as they are, have one major flaw, and that is the price. The VanMoof retails for about 3.3K, while the Cowboy sells for around 2. So into this market then, we've seen a raft of companies just flooding in that lower end and trying to produce an e-bike that's more affordable for the average consumer. And in that vein, and in this market, would like to introduce to you Analog Motion's AM1. Analog Motion are a London-based bike maker, specifically making e-bikes for the city living environment. And the AM1, this fancy little vehicle we have in front of us here, was their debut of their range. Now, it retails for £1,000, that is 1,150 euros, or $1,300 depending on where you are in the world, which puts it definitely on the lower end of the e-bike market. But let's actually go and see what you get for that money. So let's do it. First things first, the AM1 is a looker. I mean, just check out this thing. It's sleek, it's magnificent, it's nutritious and delicious. It's just a fine looking example of a bike. And it's not just looks as well, which, like I've said, are great. I've even had people stop me on the street and give me compliments about, you know, how this whole thing appears. It also seems very sturdy and well made. You know, admittedly, I've only ridden it around for like a month or two, but I don't have any worries that it's just going to collapse into 1,000 pieces on the floor around me, which, as someone who wants to ride a bike, is a good thing. So another point I really rate about the AM1 are the mudguards. That might sound absolutely ridiculous, and so on some level it is, but I have ridden bikes and e-bikes that don't have mudguards on, and let me tell you, it is ridiculous. You don't want to ride anywhere on a rainy day, because all that happens is it splashes mud up your back and makes it look like you shit yourself, which, unless you have a very strong constitution, is not really an aesthetic you should be hunting for. Now, I guess the only negative stuff for me is that even though you can get a basket on the front, there's no option to get a rear carry area, which is a bit of a shame because I'm a big fan of having a rear part on the bike you can strap bags to. But at the end of the day, if you've got a basket, I guess that's fine. So yeah, beautiful looking thing. Onto the weight. Now, I know it might not sound like an important consideration, but it is, so just bear me out for 1 second. This whole thing, including the battery, more on that in a second, weighs 13.5 kilograms, which is quite heavy, but not so heavy you can't do that a little bit with it. Now, the reason that's useful is you can cycle with it with the power off. Now, of course, doing that isn't ideal, but there are definitely going to be points when the battery runs out or you just end up in a situation where you don't have any power, and just being able to move it along using only your God-given legs is a good thing, and thankfully, the AM1 manages that. Next up, the battery, the bit everyone wants to know about, and if you don't want to know about it, that is your problem, not mine. As I'm sure you can see from the bike, it literally just slots in here and is so fast to remove and add in. It really is phenomenally convenient. Now, there are some issues with this though. The company says that it will get you about 32 kilometers. I found in my experience, it was probably closer to 20. So that meant I had to charge it every 2 and 3 days, which isn't bad, but also doesn't deliver you the same amount of journey time as bigger batteries on different bikes. But there are some benefits to this as well. As you can see, it's small, it's about the size of a water bottle, and that just means you can pop it in your bag super easily, super quickly, and it just makes it incredibly portable. You can take it with you when you go into the house. You could even get a spare one to charge it and have 2 on the go all the time, so you're never out of juice. I'd say it takes about 3 hours to charge up to full, which is fantastic. But there is that thing, it would be nicer just to have something with a bit more capacity that maybe lasted you closer to a week. But understand the AM1 is a budget bike, and of course, corners need to be cut at some costs. but it would be nice to have a bigger one. But yeah. The riding experience, the most important part of a bike, right? The bit you're actually moving from A to B. First thing I noticed is I am not a fan of these handlebars at all. They're way too narrow that it feels like they're kind of even narrower than your chest, which actually makes kind of turning at points a little bit of an annoyance. But at the end of the day, you do get used to it. It's just a little bit of a pisser. Next up is the computer. As you can see, it's this little LCD screen on here, and it is just basic and ugly. Effectively, you use it to do things like track how far you've ridden, change the speed, and a few other features like that. I guess it's fine, but it doesn't feel futuristic or exciting. It's just a real basic black and white, dull sort of thing. And yeah, in day-to-day terms, it doesn't matter really, but it does just put you off very slightly, especially when you compare it to the cool kind of built-in display you find on the VanMoof. So onto the riding itself, like how it actually functions when you're moving. I have to say it's very, very impressive. So the experience when the motor kicks in, it's very smooth. Like you're just cycling along a pace, and depending on where you've set the boost on the LCD, the motor kicks in and then just kind of drags you across the floor in a very fluid way. Now, is it as smooth as the Cowboy? No, it definitely has a slightly jerkier response to it than the other bike, but that doesn't mean it's bad, far from it. It really delivers a rounded, powerful experience when you're cycling, and you can get up to real decent speeds without really exerting yourself at all, which just makes zipping around those city streets an exhilarating experience. I'm also a big fan of the brakes on this. As you can see, it's got some proper disc brakes on it that just make you feel safe and in control, that even when you are traveling at like decent speeds, like hitting your 30 kilometers an hour, you feel in control. You don't feel like you're gonna crash and like mash yourself up because you can't brake. So how would I sum up the actual riding experience? Just slick, smooth, could be improved, but for the price, pretty decent. So overall, what do I think of Analog Motion's AM1? Basically, I prefer other e-bikes, but they've always been basically double the price. So for what you pay, it really is a fantastic effort. And I guess we've got to think of it this way. If you're looking to get into the e-bike world and commute a different way, and you're uncertain whether you want to take a big dive, a bike like this is perfect. Depending on where you live, the cost of it, around £1,000, probably is only worth like 6 to 12 months of public transport. So if after that time you decide you don't like that method, you can easily sell it on at really probably very little cost to you. And if you do like it, you can trade up to something a bit sleeker and more modern. So what I'd suggest doing is going and look on Analog Motion's website, seeing what they've got available, because they quite often launch a new bike at like an early bird price, and seeing if you can get a test ride. So apart from that, Analog Motion AM1, fantastic bike for the price. I've enjoyed my time with it. Until next time, people, au revoir.